Sometimes the most terrifying emptiness is the kind that shows up in the middle of a life that looks perfectly fine. You wake up, go to work, smile when you're supposed to, maybe even laugh sometimes. You meet people, pay your bills, keep yourself alive. But when it gets quiet, when nobody's asking for anything, when you're alone with yourself, there's this ache you can't explain. You're not ungrateful, you tell yourself. But something is missing, and that feeling, it doesn't go away. No matter how many things you fix, achieve, or prove. You keep asking yourself, why do I feel like this when I have no reason to? If that thought has ever lived in your chest, if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt like you didn't fully recognize who was staring back, or if you've ever felt like you're watching your life happen from behind a glass wall, you're not broken, you're not crazy, and you're not alone. There's a reason you feel lost even when everything seems fine. And it's not laziness, or weakness, or selfishness. It's something quieter, deeper, something we were never taught how to name. So today, we're going there. Not to give you answers wrapped in fake positivity, not to tell you what to do, but to walk with you through the fog until you start to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Because under the lostness, there is still a you, whole, worthy, waiting. And if your heart has been carrying questions it doesn't know how to ask out loud, this might be the conversation it's been aching for. Take a deep breath. Let's begin. And if something inside you feels understood here, share this with someone who's been quietly carrying the same weight. Subscribe so we can keep walking this road together. We don't have to heal alone. There's a moment most people can't describe, but almost everyone has felt. It's not a breakdown, not dramatic. There's no loud crash. It's more like drifting, like watching your life from a few steps outside yourself. You smile at the right times, say the right things, and do what's expected. But beneath all of that is a kind of emotional static, a low hum of emptiness, and you don't know how long it's been there. Maybe you can't even remember the last time you felt truly present in your own life. This is the lostness that no one talks about, the one that doesn't come from failure or disaster but from disconnection. And it can be the loneliest kind of pain because everything looks fine from the outside. People might even admire you. They think you're doing well. And sometimes you do too, until night comes, until silence wraps around you and all the pretending falls away. And what's left isn't peace. It's numbness. But you keep going, because that's what you were taught. To be strong, to push through, to not make it a big deal. Somewhere along the way, you stopped asking how you really feel. You stopped checking in with yourself. You started living for the next task, the next deadline, the next person who needs you. And now you don't remember when you last felt alive in your own skin. That's not weakness. That's survival. You've been surviving so long you forgot what it's like to feel safe in stillness, to not be performing, to be held without having to earn it. And maybe that began a long time ago, when you learned that being good meant being quiet, that being loved meant being useful, that your needs were inconvenient, that if you expressed your pain, you were too much. So you adapted, you got good at hiding. You built a self that could be admired but not always seen. And here's the truth. When your outer life is built to protect an inner wound, eventually the wound starts to ache, no matter how beautiful the life looks on the outside. You begin to feel like a stranger to yourself. You wake up and realize, I've built a life I don't feel inside of, but it's not your fault. You did what you needed to do to be safe, to be loved, to belong. The problem is, it worked too well. You got so good at becoming who you had to be, you forgot who you are. And now, you feel lost. Not because you failed, but because your soul is trying to find its way back to you. This is not the end. This is the beginning. This ache, this hollow feeling, it's not your enemy, it's your invitation. Because pain, especially quiet pain, is a compass. It always points to the parts of you that were silenced, abandoned, or ignored. And right now, maybe you're being invited to listen, not to the voice in your head that tells you to work harder, Not to the voice that says you're dramatic or ungrateful, but to the voice underneath all that noise, the one you haven't heard in years, the one that's soft and honest and aching to be seen. Can you hear it? It's okay if it's faint. That's how it always starts. But you're not lost. You're just on your way back. And you don't have to run anymore. You're allowed to be still, to feel, to want more than survival, because your story doesn't end with fine. You were made for something fuller, and even if you can't see it yet, there is a you under all this numbness. And she's not gone. He's not broken. They're not too far gone. Just buried, but not forgotten. Do you remember the first time you felt like you had to hide? Not just your tears or your anger, but your joy, your softness, your truth. Maybe you were too loud for someone who preferred you small, too sensitive for a world that celebrated toughness, too curious in a system that rewarded obedience, or maybe too honest in a family that survived on silence. Whatever it was, there was a moment, maybe many, when something inside you whispered, be less, be safer, be what they can accept. And so you learned to bend, to shrink, to protect the parts of you that weren't welcome. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, quiet, invisible, 1,000 little sacrifices that no one ever saw, but you felt them. The time you bit your tongue so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable. The way you laughed when you wanted to cry. The way you always asked how others were doing, but stopped letting people ask you back. That's how it begins. You start to believe that the real you, the full, messy, radiant, honest you, is too much, or not enough, or both. So you build a self that's easier to love. And it works. People like you're easy to be around, helpful, kind, polite, but somewhere along the way, something inside you starts to whisper again, louder this time. Where am I? Because being liked isn't the same as being seen. And when you've spent your whole life being who others need you to be, it can feel impossible to answer the simplest question. What do you want? Not what would make them happy, not what would look good, but you. In your bones. What would make you feel free? The truth is, most people don't leave themselves all at once. It's not a dramatic goodbye. It's a slow fading, a gentle ghosting of your own spirit. And then one day, you wake up and realize you miss yourself. That's the ache you've been carrying. That's the fog you can't explain. It's the absence of your own aliveness. And no achievement, no relationship, no external win can fill that space. Because it's you that you're missing. And here's the sacred paradox that no one tells you. You can only truly begin to find yourself when you stop performing. When you stop trying to impress people who wouldn't recognize your truth even if you screamed it. When you start asking, not what's expected, but what's true. And that can be terrifying. Because if you've lived your whole life becoming lovable by being someone else, who are you without the act? Who are you without the approval? That's where the real journey begins. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming everything you were taught to be, that kept you from remembering who you already are. And yes, it's messy. You might lose people. You might disappoint the ones who only loved the version of you that kept them comfortable. But the ones who see you, they'll stay, or they'll show up for the first time. Because the moment you start living from your truth, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, you send out a new signal. A quiet one, but powerful. It says, I'm home. I'm done hiding. And the people who are meant to walk with you, they'll find you there. Not the version of you thought they'd want, but the real one. The one you've been searching for all along. And you'll look at her, at him, at them, and say, I remember you. Not perfect, but whole. Not fearless, but honest. Not polished, but free. You've always been there, waiting. But coming home to yourself isn't a straight line. It's not a movie montage where everything clicks into place. It's more like this. One day you feel clear, strong, even hopeful, and the next you're right back in the fog, doubting everything, wondering if you imagined your progress. That's not failure. That's healing. And healing, real healing, is not about fixing yourself. It's about meeting yourself. Because underneath the lostness is a person who has carried 1,000 untold stories. The version of you that smiled while you were breaking. The one who kept showing up even when your heart was exhausted. The one who loved deeply even when love didn't come back. You don't need to become someone new. You need to grieve the years you spent thinking you weren't already enough. And grief, that's the part no one warns you about. Not grief for someone else, but grief for you. The you who never got to say what she needed. The you who waited and waited to be chosen. The you who silenced your needs so you wouldn't be left. That kind of grief is quiet. It doesn't scream. It sinks. It shows up in your body, in your dreams, in your patterns. It shows up in the way you avoid rest, the way you chase unavailable people, the way you apologize for simply taking up space. And slowly, gently, you start to realize this isn't about other people anymore. This is about you learning how to belong to yourself. Because if you were taught that love meant self-abandonment, then safety is going to feel wrong at first. Being seen is going to feel uncomfortable. Peace might feel boring. And you might want to run, but don't. Because this is the moment your nervous system starts to rewrite its story. When you sit with yourself, especially in the stillness, you begin to recognize something ancient and holy beneath all the chaos. You're allowed to stay. You're allowed to stay with your pain. You're allowed to stay with your joy. You're allowed to stay when things get uncomfortable, instead of performing, pleasing, or disappearing. And slowly, you become the person your younger self never had. Not perfectly, but fully. The one who doesn't shame your tears, who listens when you speak, who doesn't require you to earn rest or prove your worth through exhaustion. The one who looks at the mirror even on hard days and says, I'm still here, and I'm still worthy. That's what it means to come home. It's not an achievement, it's a remembering, and no one can take it from you. Not the person who left, not the parent who couldn't love you the way you needed, not the version of you who still struggles to believe this is possible. You don't have to feel worthy to be worthy. You just have to stay. Stay when the old story tells you to shut down. Stay when you're tempted to numb out. Stay when love feels foreign, because slowly, gently, staying becomes safety. And safety becomes love. Not the loud, dramatic fireworks kind, but the kind that doesn't leave. The kind that breathes with you. The kind that lets you rest. That's where your healing begins to blossom, not in becoming perfect, but in becoming present. And the more present you are with your truth, the less you need to perform. You stop chasing love that costs you yourself. You stop measuring your worth and how much pain you can hold without flinching. You start building a life that feels like a soft place to land. A life that doesn't just look good, but one that feels like you. And that is everything. Sometimes the hardest part of healing isn't the pain, it's the unfamiliar peace that follows it. Because when you've lived your life in survival mode, chaos becomes comfortable. The high of overachievement, the tension of waiting for rejection, the push-pull of proving your worth. These things feel normal when that's all you've ever known. So when things get quiet, when someone offers love without condition, when rest finally enters your world, your nervous system doesn't always recognize it as safety. Sometimes it registers it as threat. And that's why you might find yourself sabotaging good things, pulling away from people who are kind, doubting yourself when things go well, feeling bored when there's no drama. You're not broken for doing that. You're just still learning how to trust something new. Because when the familiar feeling of being not enough is suddenly gone, the silence it leaves behind can feel like a loss. You almost miss the struggle, not because you want it, but because it was the only thing you could rely on. And now, you're building a new rhythm, one that doesn't require you to perform, one where your softness isn't punished, one where your truth doesn't push people away but draws the right ones closer. But this takes time. You might feel the old patterns knocking on your door again. You might hear the voice that says, "Don't get too comfortable. Don't be too much. Don't expect too much." But that voice isn't truth. It's memory. It's the echo of a world that taught you to play small, to stay safe. But you're not there anymore. You've outgrown that room, that mask, that story. And even if part of you wants to crawl back into it just to feel something familiar, it's okay to take a breath and say, "I choose different." That's how healing looks sometimes. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet, sacred choice to stay with yourself. Even when it's awkward, even when it's new, even when it makes you want to run. And as you do, you'll notice something. Your relationships will shift. Not because people change, but because you do. You'll stop settling for half-hearted love. You'll stop over-explaining your boundaries. You'll stop needing to be understood by people who aren't committed to seeing you. And it might feel lonely at first. Because when you stop betraying yourself to be accepted, some people will fall away. Let them. Because you're no longer looking for a place to hide. You're looking for a place to be held. And not everyone is meant to hold you. Some people were only ever drawn to your silence, to your compliance, to the version of you who didn't speak up. And when that version fades, so do they. It hurts, but it's not a loss. It's a clearing. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, you create space for what's real. Real connection, real peace, real joy, not the fleeting kind that comes from being liked, but the deep, grounded kind that comes from being known. And here's something beautiful. The more you choose yourself, the more you inspire others to do the same. You become a mirror, a quiet permission slip. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And there's nothing more powerful than that. So if you're walking through this season wondering why you feel alone, why peace feels strange, why joy feels scary, know this. You're not going backward. You're just healing at a pace your past never allowed. And that healing, it will change everything. Not overnight, but breath by breath, boundary by boundary, brave moment by brave moment, until one day you wake up and realize you're no longer waiting for life to begin. You're living it. And now you're here. Not at the end, but somewhere in the middle, the in-between, where you've let go of who you used to be, but haven't fully stepped into who you're becoming, where the past no longer fits, but the future still feels too big. This is the part no one celebrates, the silent space between breaking and blooming. And it's hard, because you crave clarity, closure, certainty, but healing doesn't come with a map. It comes with moments. Messy, sacred moments where you show up for yourself even when you don't know how the story ends. Where you choose to stay soft even after the world told you that softness gets you hurt. Where you speak, not to be understood, but because your voice matters, even if no one's listening. This is what it means to be reborn. Not as someone new, but as someone real. Someone who no longer builds their worth on being needed, or wanted, or praised. Someone who no longer performs peace, but cultivates it one breath, one boundary, one no at a time. Someone who still gets scared, but no longer abandons themselves when fear whispers. This version of you doesn't need to be fixed. She needs to be trusted. He needs to be heard. They need to be honored. Because underneath all the noise, you always knew. There was something inside you that never forgot. Not completely. Even when you were deep in the wrong relationship. Even when you were people-pleasing yourself into invisibility. Even when you were performing happiness while quietly breaking. Some small ember of truth remained. It flickered in the dark. It pulsed in your chest when you cried for no reason. It whispered in your dreams when logic said to stay silent. And now, it's starting to glow again. You're not imagining it. That light, it's real. It's you, the real you. Not the perfect one, not the healed one, just the one who's trying, the one who's choosing, the one who's still here. And that matters, because no one else can walk your path. No one else can offer the world what you were born with. your insight, your depth, your quiet strength, your way of seeing. But you can't share those gifts while buried under who you're not. You have to peel back the layers, let go of the roles, grieve the parts of your life that were built on fear instead of truth, and then rebuild, not for them, not for approval, but for you. Build a life that feels like a conversation with your soul. Let your joy be loud. Let your rest be unapologetic. Let your relationships be rooted in mutual reverence, not rescue. Because you don't need to be saved. You need to be seen. And you don't need to be understood by everyone. You need to be loved by those who recognize your frequency. You don't need 1,000,000 followers. You need real connection, where you don't have to explain why you're quiet today, where you don't have to translate your pain, where your presence is enough. And if that kind of connection hasn't found you yet, don't shrink. Don't twist yourself into someone more palatable. Don't go back to the cage just because freedom feels lonely at first. Keep showing up as you. Keep telling the truth. Keep honoring your needs even when your voice trembles. Because every time you do, you come home a little more. And slowly, that home becomes unshakable. A place no one can evict you from. Not the old story, not the fear, not even the part of you that still wonders, am I really allowed to want this much peace? Yes. Yes, you are. Because what you're searching for isn't outside of you. It never was. It's always been you. So now you know. You're not lost. You're returning to a self you buried under years of being what the world expected, to a voice you once silenced to keep the peace, to the body you only lived in halfway because safety was never guaranteed. You're coming back, not to who you were, but to who you really are. And the fog you've felt, the emptiness, the restlessness, that was your soul knocking, not to punish you, but to invite you. Because when everything looks fine on the outside but feels hollow on the inside, it's not a failure, it's a signal, a message from the deepest part of you. It's asking you to stop, to listen, to remember. Remember what it felt like to be curious before life taught you to be cautious. Remember the dreams you left behind because someone called them unrealistic. Remember the feeling of being fully alive, even if you were young, even if it didn't last. That version of you didn't disappear. They waited for the day you'd stop running long enough to hear them whisper, "Come back to me." That's the work now. Not fixing, not forcing, not faking, but feeling. Learning how to sit with yourself in the quiet without needing to escape. Learning how to ask, "What do I want?" And letting the answer rise without shame. Learning how to trust the wisdom in your body, your boundaries, your breath, and know it won't always be easy. Some days you'll fall back into old patterns. You'll catch yourself hustling for worth again, chasing love that doesn't see you, numbing the ache with busyness or blame. But the difference now is you'll notice, you'll pause, you'll come back. That's healing, not perfection, but return. Again and again, until coming home to yourself is no longer a fight, but a rhythm. And here's something holy. Every time you choose that return, you become a living permission for others to do the same. You change the room when you walk in, not because you're loud, not because you have it all figured out, but because you carry the quiet power of someone who belongs to themselves. And that is rare and needed. So if you've made it this far, if something in this story cracked something open inside you, then maybe finally you're ready to stop asking for directions from people who've never stood in your shoes. Maybe you're ready to stop waiting for the world to validate a journey it's never walked. Maybe you're ready to come home. And if that feels too big, too fast, too impossible, just start with this. Place your hand over your heart. Close your eyes. Breathe. And say to yourself, "I'm here." And that's enough. Because it is. It always has been. And if this voice felt like a mirror, If it helped you feel seen in the silence of your own questions, don't keep it to yourself. There's someone else out there carrying the same weight in quiet. Someone who thinks they're the only one who feels this way. Share this with them. Send it like a lifeline. And if you want more spaces like this, spaces where you don't have to pretend, where your heart can breathe, subscribe. We're not building an audience here. We're building a home. For every soul that thought they were too much, too sensitive, too complicated, too quiet, too broken. You're not. You're just deep. And that depth, it's your gift.